Hello and welcome to Holistic Flow. I'm your host, Julie Francis. I'm an astrologer, coach, and founder of Wild Radiance Collective. And today I am joined by Matt Stine, a Jungian spiritual life coach, tarot reader, and certified astrologer in the Celestial Alchemy Astrology method. Matt, thank you so much for being with me here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I can't wait to dive in. I know that our conversations are always filled with such like immense depth, but they also are super expansive. Like we go everywhere. So I really think that this conversation today is going to
Yeah,
be
should be.
great. Yeah. So why don't we begin by telling us about you and how you got into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's it's a roller coaster ride. It's a spiral. It's all the things. Like there was no direct path that I can chart from the beginning to, where I am right now, or even where I'm going, to be honest, because even that seems to be constantly evolving. I don't recognize the person I was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They all seem like very different people. But so, from a spiritual perspective, since that's kind of where we let off, um, I grew up in I like to say it's more of like a folk Christianity than like the uh the Christianity that's making all the news right now. Like we went to church, but I can't really remember very many things that my elders taught me that were like the Bible says this, the Bible says this. It was like all like kind of folk religion kind of stuff. And we also, you know, everybody was very curious. My first encounters with the esoteric and witchcraft were through the same avenues that I was also receiving all of that. It wasn't talked about necessarily, but you see books on shelves and your cousins are doing this and that, and like, what's that about? And like, what do you mean you're looking at runes? And I swear I had an aunt and uncle, I can't remember which one, give me a Ouija board for a birthday present. Like, but we were all, we were Christian, right? And yeah, that was kind of where all that started. Um, and then I went to college and I met my um, now ex spouse, and religion was also very central to her upbringing. And somehow, after we got married, we ended up in like one of the flagships of honestly what I would now call a cult, but B, like, if there's anywhere that white Christian nationalism is thriving, it would be in that environment. And and so I ended up going very, 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 very deep into like quite fundamentalist um evangelical Christianity, that not friendly to any of the stuff that I do now, or that we would talk about in a normal conversation. And I just kind of thought that that was what you did when you grew up. Like you went to you went and you got settled in church, and you became like this married family that produced children, and and had all the gender roles in order, and yada yada yada. Like, I didn't know any better because I'd really never left 100-mile radius most of my life. And then I started traveling for work. And then I started meeting all these wonderful people that are not in that bubble and hearing their understanding of all the things. And then I started traveling to other countries, and I visited 5 continents. Um, and everything slowly started kind of falling apart. From
Mm.
the world is a much more expansive thing than I've been led to believe. And a lot of the information that I've been fed in a very controlled, very systematic manner to ensure that my brain was, aligned with the truth. Um, yeah, things didn't make sense. But it wasn't like I was sitting there picking out, like, oh, well, here's like a logical fallacy in these two. It wasn't that kind of it was this doesn't explain my experience. This does not explain all of these things that, the, the, the mental model did not admit paradox. And yet paradox is like, that's literally all I do is hold paradoxes now. And conflicting ideas and opposite ideas that are in polarities, and things that people would say those are opposites. I'm like, no, actually they're just different aspects of the same energy. But I didn't know that that was available. I didn't really understand that that was available. So when I left that world, I just kind of went no spirituality. Like, not atheism. I mean, like, it wasn't a topic that I engaged with. Um and then that became not enough. And that's when I started exploring again. And I first did that through progressive Christianity, but then interestingly enough, through progressive Christianity, I encountered witchcraft again. And I hesitate to say something like it sucked me in, but it kind of sucked me in. Like, it's just like, oh, this is home. This is where I'm supposed to be. And as I leaned into that, just more stuff kept coming at me. And it's like, oh, you want to learn tarot. Oh, you want to learn astrology. Oh, you want to learn how those two things integrate with one another. Oh, you're into archetypes. Oh, well, here's a whole thing on learning to become a coach that works with archetypes. And so all these things just kept coming to me. And I just kept saying yes to them. And over time, yeah, my whole conception of literally everything, like reality, the cosmos, like the big stuff, is radically different than where I started. And it's very difficult for me to even put myself into the headspace of some of those other people. It's almost like they're other timelines, and I've literally hopped into another timeline as a different person because this isn't where that person would have ended up at this point, if that makes
It
any sense at
does.
all.
Yeah.
So that's how I got here, shooting from the hip at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's the most recent version of that story. I'm getting better at telling that story, but it's still like, it's a very um it's a very foggy, numinous, almost ineffable story. Like I was telling you, I think before we started recording, that I like, when I'm in this headspace, I see in feelings. And sometimes those are very, very difficult to bring into language. Right. And so
Yeah.
I struggle to answer some of these questions because it's I haven't even completely figured out the answers to them yet.
Yeah, you're still in the midst of the journey.
Right, right. And I feel like that journey's going to be there I don't see an end, which is great. I love it. I don't want it to end. I don't want to get where I'm going yet. I'm having too much fun getting there. Uh,
Yeah, and like it's really freeing because I know for so often, for so long, I myself and often because of the world that we live in, the culture that we live in, um, often spirituality or religion is a destination, and you get to that destination, and then that encompasses so much of your life and who you are and what you're supposed to do. And part of this process is breaking away from that mentality and allowing yourself the space to be where you are and know it's not an endpoint, and that it is, going back to something you said at the beginning, it is cyclical. It is, it goes around, it's complex, there's paradoxes and these polarities, and holding it all. um the word that always comes to me is like mind bending. Because
mm,
also like it's just mind bending. And when you said that it's hard to go back to that space that you had been in previously, I understand so deeply and so completely, because for me right now, in my spiritual practices in my life, I have evolved into such a place that's taken so much time to get there, that back a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even been able to fathom where I am right now.
mm,
And I think if I were to go back in time to kind of suggest like what you were mentioning about like going back to a different mindset, it would literally feel like a beautiful picture turning to shards of glass, or like it would feel like a puzzle that just was fit and then like gets all like you pour water on it and it's like just doesn't work
mm,
anymore. And so I think these steps that we take in our thinking and our view in the world, and as you said, when the world we're actually living in isn't reflective of our experience, like that is a very, propelling moment. It's like a launch pad for change and for
mm,
experiencing things. So that being aware of that is huge. And um it's hard to hold space around. It's not just like I okay, next week I'll be there, it's all good. You have no idea, you're like, when is this all gonna make sense? So,
right, right, yeah.
yeah.
And I think that one of the most important steps into that is actually being okay with the answer might be never. Like being okay with not knowing, being okay with not having certainty about big things, like where am I going? What's at the end of all this? Is there an end? Is there a purpose? What is that purpose? Um, so much of my spiritual life was dedicated to there's a correct answer to all those questions. There's only one. You have to find the one, and if you don't have the find the one, then you're actually, living in sin or whatever. And certainty was like, I was reading an article last night that was talking about interest. I did not know that this. I'm exactly 2 months younger than the Chicago Statement on Biblical Inerrancy.
Hmm.
Um, so all of the, it's funny how the article starts out. It's like, on such and such a date, 250 white men got together and basically the idea was we're going to write the once and for all statement that proves that the Bible is perfect and is the only thing that we can even look to for any kind of guidance whatsoever. And that was a really key, milestone in getting us to where we are currently in society. Where, people are now using that book as a weapon to enact crazy shit, terrible things. If you're not certain that that's correct, it becomes very difficult to do some of those things. Like as a human being, like I'm not even talking about like the structures that are in place to kind of prevent crazy stuff from happening. I'm just saying like me, like saying I'm going to force somebody to do something. If I'm doubting that that's actually what is right, if I'm doubting that that's actually, but if I have this thing that I've been, again, brainwashed a little bit into believing that, oh yeah, this is correct. Like you're helping that person by making them do that thing that they don't want to do. You're helping that person by saying that their life is, you know, somehow like broken or perverted or whatever it may be because someone told you that that's the truth
Mm.
and then built a whole system of fear around, well, this is the truth. And if you don't follow it, bad, 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 bad things are going to happen to you forever, which is a non-choice.
Mm.
And so you choose to fall in line. And that was, I mean, again, if I go back to, I grew up within this very small bubble where there was absolutely very little information accessible. I mean, I grew up before the internet was a thing that most people touched. And so you had what your parents and your grandparents and your teachers, who, the people you went, your Sunday school teachers, whoever, you had what they gave you. And it wasn't hard to control access. We didn't have phones that we could sneak around with and learn, things that are, outside the bubble. Like we didn't have that. Um, and I credit that both for where we are with the current generation that's in power, and where we're probably going to get to go because, well, there's no generation after mine that hasn't had access to that stuff most of their life. And so just the expansion of the collective consciousness of, oh, all these things that I had no idea were out there until I started traveling, you can now know they're out there without leaving where you're sitting. Which that's how we ended up encountering one another, right?
Yeah.
Most of my friends are online friends, at least my closest ones. And yeah, so all of that from this notion of when you can let go of certainty, when you can say, I'm okay with not knowing the answer, all of a sudden all this expansion opens up. And that in and of itself can be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like I remember moments in the last couple of years where like I literally felt like I was on a rowboat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with no land in sight, and it's just me getting myself through all this. And like it took a lot of shifts for that to go from being terrifying to, oh, this is what I love. This is like this ocean of infinite possibility, like that total awareness, that total potential, of, hey, I can make anything I want. I can do anything I want. You can't do that. Why can't I? Like that's my question right now
Yeah.
that I ask more than anything else when somebody or something or myself, my ego, my shadow, whatever says you can't do that. I say, why can't I? Why not? Um, and usually the answer is because I'm stopping myself. It's
Yeah.
not really because I might point at something else and say that's what's make. But again, like, has that thing stopped me yet? No. I'm stopping myself by not trying. Now that will that thing potentially stop me? I have no clue. Don't know. But until I step into that and say, okay, well, I'm not going to stop myself. The funny thing is most of the things that I thought were going to stop me don't even show up. I'm my own worst, blocker.
Always seems to be that way. Well, and we always seem to get in our way so often. So what was the pivotal point for you? How did you get to this question of why not? Like what's stopping me? And like when was that moment where you were like, I'm saying, XYZ is the reason, but it's not.
It's hard to point to a specific moment. I do know how to describe what it feels like, though.
I want to hear that.
And because it happened again recently, there's not just one moment, there's many moments where it's like you find the key to the door that's been locked all this time, and that key just appears. It's like it appears when you're actually ready to unlock that door and walk through it. And until you're ready, you just can't find the key. Um, and the moment when that key appears is usually when I am, sitting here in the morning or sitting wherever I am. Because the most recent time it happened, I was sitting in a hotel. But I carry a little travel altar set up with me, and I'm sitting there writing in my journal and doing stuff with my cards, and there's just this moment of like the thing that I've had a block against. All of a sudden, there's just this very gentle and yet very confident yes that just, and again, it's not like I hear the word yes, it's just like I feel the yes. I feel that this thing that felt inaccessible is all of a sudden I can just go and be in that. And that most recently happened while I was in Santa Monica. I was at a 2-day event that the Jungian program that I'm a part of, Creative Mind, basically everyone who has made it past a certain point is invited to this thing. And it's 2 days of, teaching and coaching, and also just spending time with all these people that you only see through a screen. And well, I've been wrestling with an identity challenge. And that identity challenge is like, there's the me before I started becoming a spiritual practitioner, and I was a technologist. I still am. I still have a day job as a senior engineering director, and I've done software engineering my entire adult life. But I also have mostly done that in corporate settings, and I've become just completely disillusioned with corporate life. And I kind of felt like we're going to touch on all kinds of fun things right now. I kind of felt like I was trying to escape that by becoming this. And the thing about that was, and that started playing out, like I got laid off and I was out of work for 5 months, and like the job I have now is the only job that was on the table really ever during all of that time, seriously. And I'm in it and running into a lot of the same corporate stuff that I can't stand, and I'm like, what am I doing? I need to get out of this. And then at the same time, had this very, insistent but not forceful voice in the back of my mind that says, you should be coaching technology executives.
Ooh.
Because all of the stuff that you're actually learning, you are using in your role. And part of why my current corporate experience is actually a lot more tolerable is because I am using the person that I'm becoming and the skills that I've gained to do that job and to do it well and to have better relationships and all of these different things, be a better leader. And I'm like, so why would I just, if I have the skill to impart this, and I have the skill to make it practical in this world, that feels like a gift that I can give. So why shouldn't I? And but I was like, no, 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 no. Like I want out of this world. I want to go just be in the spiritual, energetic, witchy, fun world all the time and make that. And first of all, it's not all fun and games. Um, I've had some clients come to me with some heavy shit. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like it's not really an escape from discomfort or being too tired to show up for somebody or whatever it is. And so, like, all of these things are happening in my mind. And then astrologically, right now, um, we've just had the nodes shift into Virgo and Pisces. And guess where my nodes are? They're in Virgo and Pisces, but I'm in my nodal opposition right now. And so, like, there's this purging of the shadows of my north node and actually integrating my south node, and how that's expressing is that I just feel those things, that polarity is collapsing, and
I
now
just
it's
saw,
like
like,
this.
when in space when things, like, collapse on each other.
Yeah,
But it was, like, in slow-mo.
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
A
yeah,
great
there's
description.
yeah, yeah. And so, like, all of that started in that moment. That was February 22nd, 222. um and I'm still going. Like, I haven't come down from that. I'm not sure that energetically I finally started to come down from it a little bit. Like the high, I was on a high for like 2 weeks that I could not explain other than this did it. And so that it's starting to level out, but the mindset shift, the experience of reality, the expansiveness that is here now that wasn't there before. The doors that I unlocked and opened are still wide open, and I can't. It's like, people say, I can't unsee that. I can't unhear. Like, I can't unexperience this. Like, it's part of me now, and so many things have come out of that. But one of them is that I started a technology executive coaching business. I literally rolled the whole business out in a week. um what is interesting was a lot of stuff that I had been developing for my spiritual business, I literally just reframed it, rebranded it, made it to where it speaks the language of that particular market and client space. And it's going very well. It feels very smooth. It feels very flow. Like,
Yeah, it sounds like it just rolled off your tongue because you could speak to it so directly, and you're using it, as you said, like,
yeah,
you're living it.
yeah, yeah. And so, like, for a long time, I've had this idea in the back of my mind that I want to integrate my professional identity,
Mm.
but I didn't know what that meant other than it's not this. I'm constantly persona swapping
So
between
gross
the
feeling,
two
right?
worlds.
It's
It's exhausting.
yeah.
It's exhausting because I'm like, I'm this and I'm this, but I feel like I'm going through like this. Have you watched Severance?
I don't think so.
It's an Apple show. I've only watched one episode of it, and it's weird. But the premise is that basically they surgically separate your work life from your personal life.
Whoa.
And there's like this thing in your brain that, like, when you go into the office, you and you're like, you have no memory or you're your work person. And then
Holy
when you
cow,
go
talk
back up,
about high-powered capitalism. Oh my
right? And
gosh.
then when you come out, you're your personal person. And
What? I've gotta look this thing up.
yeah,
Oh
you
my
should, you
gosh.
should, you should. It is not comfortable to watch.
It sounds
Um,
really uncomfortable.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, like, it's a very good metaphor for how just, again, disruptive, disembodied, like just disintegrating, disintegrating, of
Yes.
an experience it is to go back and forth between those two identities. And now I feel like they've collapsed, and it doesn't mean that I mean it's not nearly as disruptive of an outward shift as I expected it to be.
It's all
Like
internal.
part of what I
Yeah.
was blocking was, oh, I'm going to have to figure out how to make my brand make sense, and I'm going to have to figure out how not to alienate this audience while I'm talking about this stuff, and what if people get confused about what I do and they're not going to buy anything? All that stuff is A, gone, but B, was never as big of a deal as I thought it was. And in fact, most of the people that I talk about, like the people who know both of those sides of me, think, oh yeah, this, of course, very natural, I get it.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, like it's yeah, a lot is happening right now. um I'll say cosmically, that is like I'm at one of those moments
I love
where,
those moments. They're terrifying, but I love those moments. Like
yeah,
you're you're just allowing and holding space and just allowing the fear and uncertainty to exist while you continue forward, and all you keep doing is moving forward through it. Even though it's not a linear path. I don't want to make it sound linear, but it's like a loop-de-loop path
yeah,
forward.
it really is. It really is. Like it's I mean, I can't remember if this was on or off the recording, but I'm talking about like timeline shifting. Like the idea that being I can't really in a linear way explain how I got here, because even though my past it's like, even though my past experiences, I understand, I feel how one thing led to another. If I wrote it down that way and just said, okay, here's what happened, it's not going to make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I so want to tell the story. That's the thing. Like, I have this grand vision of one day actually writing all this down, and in a book, memoir, whatever, I don't know, but like it feels like one of those projects that I'm gonna have to be like, that's all I'm doing
Hmm.
for that period of time. It's
Yeah.
not something I'm gonna be able to do well when I'm, you know, not in, like, I don't know, maybe one day I will get the sabbatical that I dream about. But like, yeah, um, I can't be like having a job and having, you know, I need to keep things going. Like, I need to be able to just step away and go hide for however long, and put this thing down, at least in draft form, as that's it, like that's all I'm doing. And then I can go on. but
Yeah. It definitely
but
makes me think that the moment hasn't happened yet on purpose. Like there's more to the journey to be had.
mm,
There's more to be integrated and disintegrated. I love that you used that word. That was so great. Before you can do that. And I've had a similar experience where I've been like, oh, I want to write about this. But that ended up not being the thing I was supposed to write about. So it could
yeah,
end up being something like that too, where um, and we'll have to wait and see for that, because that's going to be, oh my gosh,
for
that's
sure.
it's going to
And
be
what that book would have
amazing.
been, had I tried to write it 3 years ago, would have been a completely different book.
Totally, yeah.
And it's not the
There's
book,
so
and I
much.
don't want that book now.
Another super good point, yeah, because you're like, what is it that I want to be connected with or known for or put all your energy into? And there are things that take us back or
Yeah,
detract from where we are, or from our energy. And
yeah, I'm bigger
yeah,
than that
so
now. Like,
oh my gosh. And that's actually like a perfect moment. And so Matt is, for those of you watching or listening, Matt is leading a workshop on May 7th, live on Zoom, or you can get the replay. And it's called From Reclaiming the Power of Choice Through Shadow Work with Matt Stine. So this I love that we like led in with the word reclaiming right in this moment as we were shifting to talk
Yeah.
about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect in this workshop and what kind of transformation they could experience?
Yeah, totally. So the idea of shadow work, and shadow work's one of those terms that drives me a little bit crazy because it means something different to literally everybody. Um, so I am coming at it from a I'm not going to say traditional. I'm going to say classic Jungian approach, like the way he specifically talked about the psyche. And in a nutshell, um, we come into this life mostly unconscious, right? And early childhood experiences, we are living in the unconscious mind, which is mostly emotion. And around 7, 8 years old, we start to develop a very strong identity of I, like me, mine, my space, like how I relate to the other eyes that are out there. And we start to look at what are all the things that were harmful? What are all the things that were dangerous? What are all the things that are taboo? What are all the things that are unacceptable? Whether I learned it from my parents or my friends or my teachers or whoever else. And our ego starts to take those things and push them down, repress them, hide them in what Jung called the shadow. Um, the problem with the shadow is that those things aren't gone. They just go into your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is very much influencing you literally all the time. 24/7 while you sleep, while you wake, all the your unconscious is speaking to you. When you're asleep, it's through dreams. When you're in a deep meditative state, it's through visions, imagination. Like when we use our imagination, our unconscious is actually has a very strong connection to what's going on. You get lost in creating a piece of artwork. A lot of what you're creating is actually unconscious. So those are all fun, beautiful things, but also like when somebody does something that triggers you emotionally, that trigger is actually you, your unconscious mind, taking something that's in your shadow that wants to be integrated, that wants to be acknowledged, and projecting it out on the person or event or whatever it is that's triggering you. And we say, that person made me feel X. Well, nobody can make you feel anything. Um, your unconscious mind made you feel that so that you could start to realize, hey, this is part of me. Why is this here? Why does this bring up that emotion? What's that emotion trying to protect me from? What's so bad about that thing that the emotion's trying to protect me from? Is that what's really happening right now? Or am I connecting what's happening right now to that thing that I pushed down when I was really young into my shadow? And so if we just live in this reactive mode of trigger, react, trigger, react, trigger, react, we're actually not choosing our life. We're actually not choosing how we want to behave. And like I first encountered this idea decades ago. It was in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it wasn't really expressed this way, but this notion of like there's a space between stimulants and response, and you want to live in that space. And believe me, if you try to do that from the ego, you're gonna just wear yourself out.
Yeah.
But what I really needed, and to at that point to understand that idea was shadow work. that shadow work, that self-inquiry, that taking those triggers and instead of pushing it away, wanting it to go away, seeing triggers. Oh, triggers are actually very helpful things. They tell us so much about ourselves. And so, but that requires us to be okay with, feeling safe to sit in that discomfort, whatever.
I feel
Yeah,
it.
but like to sit in that and say, why are you here? What are you trying to tell me?
Mm,
What about me wants to become, again, integrated with the rest of me, so that it's not like those triggers are going to stop happening. All those things, you're going to be projecting and doing shadow work for the rest of your life. But as you start to understand those emotions, you start to open up that space to freely choose, what is my response going to be to this triggering thing? What is my response going to be to this feeling that I have that is trying to tell me danger, danger? But I'm like, okay, there's not actually danger. So what is it? And it's just that process of going through that, gaining those insights, and having those things open up for you. Little by little, you start to move into this space of, hey, I can actually see things for what they really are, and I can choose the kind of life that I want to create for myself. And the cool thing is when you start doing that, you actually stop drawing in these things to trigger you because you're integrated. Like those particular triggers stop showing up because they're no longer needed. And there's a whole lot we could go
mm,
into about like the
yeah.
consciousness and how that works to explain why that is. But in the event, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to go into a group visualization that's called the shadow room. And basically the shadow room is where you keep all of this stuff. And you're going to get the opportunity to explore that shadow room and find something that wants to be integrated and do some of that internal work. And then after that visualization, for folks who feel comfortable, we're going to do some very we call it laser coaching of like, all right, we're gonna take what we might normally do in 30 minutes and do it in like 5 to 7 minutes. So for folks who feel comfortable, and as many time as we have time to get through in during the event, we're gonna kind of like, you're gonna get to share an experience, and then I'm gonna coach you through it a little bit, and then we're gonna wrap up, and that's gonna be it's very powerful. I've seen it done. I've been a part of these a few different times, and believe it or not, you can actually get a lot done in 5 to 7 minutes. If you're willing to go on that journey. But also, I do coaching where we do this kind of work for 30, 45 minutes, an hour, multiple sessions over multiple months, where we can like the experiences that we kind of talked about today of like making these big jumps, that you're doing work and then all of a sudden you like jump, like you do like a quantum leap of some kind. That's what my coaching packages are designed to do, is like take you on a journey that looks like the journey we've been talking about. That's what my coaching is all about, whether I'm talking to executives or I'm talking to witchy folks or both. I'm both. So yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. You've in full circle integrated yourself and showing like these are all the people I serve, but I am also all of these people. I am all of this. So this transformational journey is huge, and it's not easy to do alone, and it's so wonderful to have
Mm.
guidance along the way, but then to have someone like you that you can really speak to from a lot of various experiences, those that are paradoxical or, really confusing and complex, like you can hold that space for that transformational journey, which I think is absolutely amazing. I'm so looking forward to this workshop, and I know everybody else is as well. And I'm going to put all of the information on how to connect with Matt and their work and in the show notes below. And then also I'll put in the details about Matt's workshop that's coming up. And I will just say before we finish that the workshop is live on Zoom. As I mentioned, you can get the replay. It's on May 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And it's going to be amazing because Matt is going to work with us, which is phenomenal in a workshop experience. And I'm so glad we could create it together.
Yeah, me too. I love collaborations. I enjoy working on my own, but anytime I get to work with someone else and see what we can create together that's better than what we would create individually, that's my favorite thing to do. So I'm so happy that you invited me to do something with your platform.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing your expertise and all of your experiences with us. And I can't wait to see you and everybody else then.
Sounds great.
Have a wonderful day, Matt.
Thanks.